So you can see I don't have my sketchbook with me today, and for good reason. I figured I was gonna draw a larger background today, and by that I mean I'm only drawing the background. I'm not drawing any people or characters. Nope, I'm just going to be drawing the background, and that's it. Because the thing I noticed with quite a bit of my drawings is that the background was either non-existent or it was just a block of color. So I figured I might as well brush up on my skills. And for those of you who have seen my Kingdom Wars videos, you'll know I usually divide my sketchbook page into like sixths or somewhere around there, which is really nice, and I can fit in the story into one sketchbook page, which is also great for saving paper, but it makes my drawings really, really tiny. So I figured, why don't I just make a really large background to brush up on my skills and also give me the additional challenge of drawing larger. So now we're here. And I also decided to use a colored pencil so that way I wouldn't have any line art showing, just to also add that additional challenge to it. And the colored pencil I figured would be the easiest way, so that way I wouldn't have to erase too much, and the marker would just hide the colored pencil for the most part. So I just was trying to make it easier on myself in that regard. And then I realized I would have to erase the colored pencil that I did for shading because there wasn't really point in adding it in the first place. So then I moved on to the trees, and I decided to use one of the smaller trees to test out my marker shading for the tree before moving on to the other ones, and I just kind of did some light swishing motions back and forth to try to make it seem more like a tree, and switching between all of my markers before moving on to the other trees and trying the same thing. And it was working well for the smaller trees, but as we move on to some of the larger trees, I realized I would have to add a whole lot more details to try to make it seem more like trees. And something that I picked up was that if I did circles and then had all the other lines go around those circles, it would seem more like tree bark. So that was a good tip to learn, so I kind of used that quite a bit. And I also decided to add multiple circles throughout, because for the larger trees, there was way too much light brown showing, so I had to really use those darker markers a lot. And thankfully I got it to a place that I liked, because those darker colors really needed to show up more, otherwise it was just going to be a cookie color, and I don't want them to look like cookie trees. That wasn't really the idea that I was going for, so you could see me just switching out a lot of those colors over and over, mainly using this darker mid-tone brown that I was using, and just going over it over and over and over, before ultimately I got it to somewhere that I wanted, and I moved on to the tree leaves. And the leaves, I had to cover an even bigger amount of area, so you can kind of see that it's very, how do I say this, not good looking at first. And I also realized that with the trees, I kind of went a little too far over on my line art, because I had it be yellow because I thought that would be more faint and people wouldn't see it as much. But that also means I didn't see it as much, so I kind of went a bit over the lines at times. So I went with a really light blue-green before going in with some more greens, I guess. And then also brought the brown back to make it seem like there were some trees, branches still showing underneath all the leaves, before going and doing the same thing with the other tree, because I really liked how it went the first time, and adding it in with the trees in the back. I also realized that if I did this with all the trees, it might seem too cohesive and blend them all together when I want it to still seem like there are, in fact, separate trees. So with some of the trees in the back, I decided to add in another green, but way darker than all the other ones, to make an additional shadow color. So that way you could tell that the trees in the back are actually in the back. And I'm glad that I did that, because that really helped with showing depth with this background, which I might not have learned or done if I didn't do this challenge, so I'm really glad that I did this. And going on to this last tree, you may realize that a lot of these were very splotchy, and as I was going in and doing these bushes, my lightest blue-green actually died out. And that was probably understandable. I was using it for like half of this illustration, but that also meant I had to more heavily rely on some of my other colors when coloring in these bushes. And now we're moving on to the rocks. I had to use a lot of cool grays with this rock, and unfortunately a cool gray is color that I use a lot, so I was hoping that it wouldn't dry out either, because I just had the blue-green dye out. I really didn't need that to dye out either, because I also had the cave off to the side that I needed to use with that color, but thankfully that didn't dry out either. And now we're moving on to the path, but the path color I originally used came out as way too golden colored. I wanted it to be a little bit lighter, but unfortunately those colors I use a lot for skin tones, and I did not want to lose those skin tone colors. So I made sure that I used a different color, but that meant that I had to keep the path yellow, so oh well. I also made sure that the grass color I used was more yellow in tone, because the trees were more of a blue-green, and I did not want those to merge with the bushes or anything else, so I also added in some dots to make it seem like there was individual grass blades. And I wanted it to make it seem like it was a more fuller forest, so I used the space off to the side to test to see if it would seem great to have more leaves in the back, but that ultimately made it seem very dark, so I didn't go with it and instead went for the sky blue color that I did above the trees and the cave, which I personally like a whole lot better. It makes it seem way more positive and less ominous, which is what I was going for with the cave, which is why I added black Posca pen to it. And I instead added brown Posca pen behind the trees to make it seem like a more fuller forest, which is what I was initially going for with the dark green leaves behind the trees in the first place. So with that, the piece is done. Now I hope you all like this personal little challenge of mine, and if you like more challenge videos like this, I personally would recommend my one marker challenge video with a twist, where I did a really cool take on the one marker challenge, which I think you will personally enjoy. So with that, I hope you all have a magnificent day, and I will see you all later.